Imagine waking up tomorrow and everything you depend on is gone. No electricity, no clean water, no internet, only silence. And a world where every step you take could put you in danger. This isn't fiction. It's reality for millions of people on Earth. Where survival isn't guaranteed, it's earned every single day. Number 1. The Korori leaving the ground to survive. In most parts music of the world, the ground is where life feels safe, stable, and familiar. But for the Korori people of southeastern Papua, Indonesia, the ground is often the most dangerous place to be, living deep within one of the most isolated rainforests on Earth. A region still difficult to access even in 2026. The Korori number only around 3,000 to 4,000 individuals, and many communities still live with minimal contact with modern infrastructure. On the forest floor, dangers are constant and unpredictable. The humid tropical climate creates ideal conditions for diseases like malaria and parasitic infections, which remain a serious health threat in remote parts of Papua. Seasonal rains can rapidly flood the land, turning it into unstable, muddy, ground, while snakes, insects, and other wildlife move quietly through the dense vegetation. In an environment where even a small injury or infection can turn fatal, the Korori made a remarkable change. They decided to leave the ground completely. Instead, they construct their homes high above it, building tree houses that usually stand 30 to 45 meters above the forest floor, with some reaching nearly 50 m, similar to a 15-story building. These homes are not temporary shelters, but complete living spaces, carefully built using wood, bamboo, vines, and palm leaves, all without modern tools, or safety equipment. Accessing these homes requires climbing narrow ladders carved, directly into tree trunks. A task carried out daily by adults, and even young children without any harness or protection. What may appear extreme from outside is for the Korori a practical solution shaped through generations of experience. Living at such heights reduces exposure to mosquitoes, lowers risk of disease, protects from flooding, and provides safety from predators. It also offers a strategic benefit, allowing them to spot potential threats from a distance. Historically, it even helped them avoid conflict with rival groups. Perhaps most remarkable is that until the 1970s, the Korori had very little contact with the outside world, living entirely within the boundaries of their forest environment. For them, this way of life is not unusual. It is simply normal. Number 2. The dune, one step between life and death. There is a place in West Africa where the line between life and death, is no wider than a single step. Along the Bandiagra escarpment in, Mali, a vast sandstone cliff stretching nearly 150 kilometers, the dune people have built their lives on the edge, literally. Today, the dune population is estimated at around 800,000 to 1 million people, many of whom still live in villages carved into or attached to the cliff face, some hundreds of meters above the ground. The terrain is harsh. Narrow ledges, vertical drops, and loose rock-shaped daily movement. One wrong step here doesn't mean injury. It often means falling into emptiness, with no chance of survival. Yet for generations, this is where the dune have chosen to remain. Not because it is simple, but because historically, it was safer than the alternative. Centuries ago, the cliffs, protected them from slave raids and regional conflicts across the Sahel. While the plains below exposed communities to attacks, the escarpment became a natural fortress. Living here meant survival. But survival came with cost. Every part of life demands balance, precision, and constant awareness. Children grow up running along narrow paths, with steep drops nearby, developing spatial awareness, music, early that would be unimaginable elsewhere. Homes, granaries, and sacred, music, structures are built directly into rock, often reachable only by climbing or using risky paths. Even daily tasks like carrying water or farming, music, require navigating terrain where gravity is always a danger. Despite modernization reaching, music, parts of Mali, many dune communities still rely on traditional living, with limited infrastructure, music, and healthcare access, especially in remote cliff villages. What is extraordinary is not just their location, but their perception of it. For the music, dune, fear of heights is not something learned. It is something that never fully forms. Being born into a world where every step requires focus, music, changes normality. This is not recklessness, but deep adaptation where survival, music, depends on precision rather than strength. And here, music, every step is a decision. One that determines whether you continue forward or disappear, music, into the silence below. Number 3. Meteora. Faith built above the void. Music, what would you risk to feel closer to God? In central, music, Greece, rising suddenly from the plains of Thessaly stand the towering rock pillars, music, of Meteora, some reaching over 400 m above the valley floor. On top of these massive, music, stone formations sit monasteries that seem almost impossible to reach. Built, music, by monks who believe true spiritual connection required separation from the world below. Today, Meteora, music, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and 6 active monasteries remain, but their origin goes, music, back to the 14th century when monks began climbing these cliffs seeking isolation, music, safety, and devotion. At that time, there were no stairs, no roads, no music, modern access. The only way up was climbing or being lifted in baskets and nets tied to ropes, hanging hundreds of meters above the ground. There were no guarantees. Music, if a rope failed, there was no rescue. Yet they continued, not out of fear, music, but belief. These monasteries were not built quickly. Music, construction required lifting stone, wood, and materials up sheer rock faces, music, using only human strength and simple pulley systems. Every wall, every structure took years, music, sometimes decades, in an environment where a single music mistake could be deadly. Even today, those steps and bridges exist to, music, help visitors. The sense of isolation remains. Strong winds, narrow, music, paths, and steep drops still define the landscape. But for the monks who chose this life, danger was never the focus. Height, music, difficulty, isolation, these were not obstacles, they were part of the path. In their belief, music, moving away from the safety of the world below brought them closer to something greater. Meteora is not just architecture. It is proof of how far humans are willing, music, to go for meaning. Because for some, safety is not the goal. Purpose is. And sometimes that, music, purpose is found not on solid ground, but above the void. Number 4. Ethiopia. Carving stone to reach the divine. Music, there are places built by humans, and places revealed by them. In the highlands of northern Ethiopia lies Lalibela, a site unlike any other. Home to 11 monolithic churches carved directly into music, solid rock, dating back to the 12th and 13th centuries. Instead of building upward, workers removed thousands of tons of stone downward, carving into the earth to free, music, entire structures from a single mass. These churches, some reaching 10 to 15 m below, music, ground level, were not made with modern machines, but with simple tools, patience, and extraordinary dedication. Even in 2026, Lalibela remains one of Ethiopia's most important pilgrimage sites, music, attracting thousands of visitors, especially during major religious events like Jena, Ethiopian Christmas. But reaching these sacred, music, places has never been easy. The surrounding terrain is rough, uneven, and in some areas dangerously, music steep. Narrow paths, carved tunnels, and deep drops connect the complex, requiring careful movement. Music, in more remote parts outside tourist routes, some churches are still, music, reachable only by climbing natural rock surfaces with minimal support. For centuries, music, pilgrims have traveled on foot for days across difficult landscapes, driven not by need but by faith. The journey itself is part of belief. What makes Lalibela remarkable, music, is not just its structure, but its meaning. No one was forced to carve, music, these churches. No one was required to make these journeys. Yet generation after generation chose, music, to continue, investing years of labor into something that offered no guarantee of safety, music, comfort, or reward. For them, the closer they came to hardship, the closer they felt to something greater. Lalibela stands today, music, not only as history, but as human persistence, music, and faith, where stone became meaning. Number 5. The Uro's living music on what is slowly disappearing. Imagine waking up every day knowing the ground beneath you is slowly, music, sinking. Not symbolically, but physically. On Lake Titicaca at an, music, altitude of about 3,812 meters, 12,500 feet, above sea level, one of the highest navigable, music, lakes in the world, the Uro's people have built their lives on floating islands made entirely of reeds. These islands are, music, not permanent. They are not stable. They are constantly, music, breaking down. The Uro's, a small indigenous group in Peru and Bolivia, maintain around, music, 120 floating islands, each made from layers of tatora reeds, music, that grow in the lake. But reeds decay. Water enters. The structure weakens, music, over time, meaning survival here is not about building once, but rebuilding constantly. Every few weeks, new layers of fresh, music, reeds must be added on top to stop the islands from falling apart or sinking. Beneath them, music, lower layers are already decomposing, slowly dissolving into the water. There is no solid, music, ground, no permanent foundation. Homes, boats, and watchtowers are all made from the same fragile material. One mistake, neglecting maintenance, music, or misjudging structure, can cause collapse. Yet for generations, the Uro's have chosen to stay. Historically, these islands were not just homes, but survival strategy. When threatened by stronger groups like the Inca, the Uro's could move their islands, escaping danger across the lake. Mobility music was their defense. Today, challenges are different. Climate change, music, pollution, and tourism affect Lake Titicaca, making tatora reeds harder to, music, sustain in some areas. Still, the Uro's continue adapting, balancing tradition and modern pressure. What defines them is not stability, but resilience. There is no long-term safety. Only the knowledge that everything beneath is temporary. And perhaps music, that is what makes their life so striking. While most people try to build something permanent, music, the Uro's live on something always changing, always weakening, yet still enough to carry them through each day. Number 6. The Kalash. Protecting identity in isolation. Music, there are communities that struggle against nature, and others that struggle against disappearance. In the remote valleys of the Hindu Kush Mountains in, music, northern Pakistan lives the Kalash people, a small indigenous group of only around 3,500, music, to 4,000 individuals as of 2026. Surrounded by peaks rising above 6,000 m, their villages are among, music, the most isolated in the region. Access is limited, roads are narrow and unstable, music, and in winter heavy snow can cut off entire valleys for weeks. Temperatures drop below freezing, while landslides and floods remain constant risks. Music, physically, survival is already difficult. But for the Kalash, the bigger struggle is music, preserving identity. Unlike surrounding populations, they maintain a distinct religion, music, language, and culture that has survived for centuries. Their traditions include seasonal festivals, unique clothing, and beliefs closely tied to nature. But over time, external pressures have increased. Migration, modernization, music, and cultural blending have reduced their numbers, making them one of the most vulnerable minorities in the region. Estimates show their population has dropped from tens of thousands in the past to only a few thousand today. This means every generation carries responsibility, music, beyond survival. They must also protect identity from extinction. Life here comes with trade-offs. Healthcare is limited, education is improving but uneven, and economic resources are scarce. Many rely on small farming and livestock on steep terraces requiring constant care. Yet despite all challenges, they continue traditions, passing them through rituals, music, stories, and daily life. What makes them remarkable is not just endurance, but resistance to cultural loss. For them, survival is not only staying alive, but staying themselves. Because in a changing world, the hardest thing to protect is not life, music, but identity. Number 7. The Brakpa. Music, when breathing becomes a struggle. There are places on Earth where survival is not about food or shelter, but something far more basic: music, air. In the high-altitude regions of Ladakh in northern India near the Pakistan border, music, live the Brakpa people. They inhabit valleys between 3,000 and over 4,000 m, 9,800 to 13,000 feet, above sea level, music, where oxygen levels are 30 to 40% lower than normal. For most people, arriving here causes immediate physical stress, shortness of breath, fatigue, and altitude sickness. But for the Brakpa, this is not temporary. Music, it is life. The environment offers no comfort. Summers bring strong sunlight and UV exposure due to thin air, while winters are harsh, music, with extreme cold and heavy snow isolating regions for long periods. The land is dry, rocky, and hard to farm, forcing reliance on limited agriculture and livestock adapted to extremes. Resources are scarce, and infrastructure remains limited, music, even in 2026, with healthcare and transport still difficult in remote areas. Yet the human body adapts over generations. High-altitude populations like the Brakpa develop traits that help them survive low oxygen conditions, such as improved oxygen use and greater lung capacity. What exhausts others becomes normal for them. Daily life, walking, carrying, farming, happens in conditions where every breath takes effort. Movement is slow, heavy, and deliberate. But what defines them is not difficulty, but normalization. There is no comparison to easier life, no expectation of comfort. Thin air, cold nights, and isolation are constants. And when breathing itself becomes effort, survival is no longer about strength or speed, but endurance. Because in a place where air itself is limited, simply continuing to live is already music, achievement. Number 8. When survival becomes normal. These places were never made for human comfort. Music, no stable ground, no easy access, no guaranteed safety. Yet people still live there, not visiting, not exploring but living. The Kurorawai rise above forests, music, to escape what lies below. The dune walk cliffs where every step matters. The monks of Meteora built faith where falling was always possible. In Ethiopia, entire sacred spaces were carved from stone over decades of work. The Uros rebuild their ground constantly, knowing it, music, will not last. The Kalash protect identity in isolation, surrounded by forces that could erase them. And the Brakpa breathe thin air every day, music, where oxygen is limited. Different places, different struggles, but one truth. They did not choose hardship for suffering. They adapted because there was no other option. Over time, what was once dangerous became normal. That is the most unsettling part. Not the height, isolation, or instability, music, but how easily humans adapt to what others would see as impossible. Because comfort, music, is not universal. Safety is not guaranteed. And what feels unbearable to one person can become everyday life to another. So now, music, the question turns to you. If you were born there, on cliffs, in trees, on water, or in thin air, without modern tools, music, without support, without escape, would you adapt or break? Music, if this changed how you see the world, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Truth of the World. There are still countless stories that challenge everything you think you know. This video is created for educational and documentary, music, purposes based on real communities and environments around the world. It is not music meant to promote risk or danger, but to highlight human resilience and adaptation. Viewer understanding and respect are encouraged.